All right, welcome to today's webinar. We want to thank everyone for joining us for a joint webinar today, Cybersecurity and Cyber Liability Insurance, a dual defense. So we're really excited to be talking about both of these topics, how they work together and how they form that dual defense. And so thank you guys for joining us today. It's going to be a really great discussion and really excited to dive into this. A little housekeeping before we dive into the meat of our conversation. My name is Chris Nation. I am the marketing manager here at Mirazon, and very excited to be kind of moderating and handling logistics for today's webinar. So thank you guys for joining us. Just a quick agenda. We will be going over some logistics, speaker introductions, and we'll move into cybersecurity and then a discussion on cyber liability with Terry. And then we will also have plenty of time at the end for questions. Anything that you hear on the security side, anything you hear on the insurance side, we'd love to have that conversation with you guys. We will talk about an upcoming webinar in September, and then we also have a leave behind that we want to give all webinar attendees, so thank you for joining there. We will have about 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. And so if you do have a question, though, feel free to drop that into the chat as Terry and Brent are talking, and we would be happy to address that real time, and we also can address it at the very end of the webinar. So with that, it is my privilege to introduce our speakers for today. First up is Brent Earls. He is the Chief Technology Officer at Mirazon. And first, who is Mirazon? Mirazon is a technology service provider, and we offer expert IT advisory services. We specialize in managed IT services, cybersecurity, and IT consulting. We were founded in 2000, 25 years old in Louisville, Kentucky. And we work with a lot of great vendors and partners in the industry, including Dell, Microsoft, Ruckus, Veeam, and Object First. So we're really excited to have Mirazon work with Hyland Insurance on this. Brent has been with the company since 2007, and he specializes in storage and virtualization. He manages our high-level architecture and design and technical escalations, and really helps solve complex problems for businesses. So Brent really looks at those strategic items and how he can help businesses grow with technology. He has a BS in Computer Information Systems from University of Louisville, and he holds several industry certifications that are very well known in our industry. So thank you, Brent, for joining us today. Brent will cover our cybersecurity discussion. Next up is Terry Hyland. Terry is the president of Hyland Insurance. And who is Hyland? Hyland specializes in business insurance, personal insurance, employee benefits, senior care, and for today's discussion, cyber liability insurance. It was founded in 1983, and Hyland is a very premier independent insurance company. So Terry is the president of Hyland. He's a lifelong Louisville resident, began his career after graduating from Bellarmine University, and he supports various causes in the Louisville community. And so Terry runs Hyland. So Terry, we appreciate you being here to discuss the cyber liability insurance aspect of this. So great panel for today. A lot of expertise in this topic. And so very excited to kick this off. So Brent, I'm going to throw it over to you to discuss cybersecurity.
All righty. So welcome, everyone. We're going to try to keep this high level and not get too in the weeds, as tech people tend to do. But we're kind of going to go over what the security landscape looks like now. And we're going to start by talking about who's the target. So cybersecurity isn't anything new. This has been a topic since the 80s for companies. Large organizations have always had a big focus on cybersecurity because they're big targets. A lot of security incidents weren't actually profitable for the people doing them. A lot of times what would happen is someone would get in and they would leak confidential information. They would give somebody something they shouldn't have, corporate espionage type stuff, but largely there wasn't a lot of money in it unless there was insider trading or something like that. What most people have dealt with for years from a security standpoint has been viruses and malware, but those were largely just malicious. They didn't actually do anything for the people making them. They were largely just made to mess with other people, for lack of a better way of putting it. And generally speaking, when we had these major outbreaks, and you can go back, there's been loads of them, they stopped work, but as soon as the virus was taken care of, everything was just back to normal. There wasn't any long-term ramifications. you would lose some business work time, but overall there wasn't any major long-term problem. Then came ransomware. So ransomware came about a few years ago, and the big thing with this is it is profitable. So ransomware is anything that installs on a computer. It will normally steal the data first. So the bad actors will be in your environment through ransomware. They will try to find sensitive, confidential information for your company, preferably end user data. It then encrypts everything in your environment. So you no longer can get to any of your own stuff. Your servers are all down. You can't get to any of your files, but they also target backups, which means you can't just restore. And if you have DR sites, they target those also. And they leave behind a nice little link to a web page where you can pay them a ransom for an encryption key to get all your data back. But then they also threaten that they're going to leak your data into the dark web if you don't pay more money. So essentially it's a double tap to get money out of you. So that's why they're looking for that confidential information. That's why they're looking for preferably your end user, your end customer data, because most people not super worried necessarily about their own stuff unless there's internal IP, but they're very worried about their customer list. They're really worried about somebody knowing all their customers, their customer names, and also depending on the company, you now have to make a public filing or a public statement that we were violated, here's what happened, your data has been leaked. You might have to offer up personal identity protection for people. So that's what they're really going for, is they give you a situation where you basically have to pay them money, which it's a business model now. And that's really changed who the target for all of this is. So we mentioned before that mostly it was large businesses that were the target for everything, but now that's changed. Because they're ransoming everything, you can make money even from the smallest company. Before, if you were trying to get, internal IP or defame a company and all that, you were going for big companies, Fortune 500s, big type organizations. But now, even small companies can make money. So a lot of times these smaller companies are less secure, largely because they don't have as much money to spend on cybersecurity. And so that means that they're much easier to get into. They're much easier to encrypt quickly. Large companies have so much data, they might not be able to encrypt or exfiltrate the information they want quickly. Whereas small companies, that's a lot easier. And so what these organizations, these malicious actors, as we call them, have found is that getting 20 small ransoms of $50,000 is a lot less work and a lot faster than trying to get one ransom of $1 million. So what's happening is now we're seeing small businesses as the primary targets for these malicious actors. And we're dealing with this constantly at companies that are only 20 employees, 50 employees, a couple thousand. That's not to say that these malicious actors aren't still going for the bigger companies. They definitely are, because they can charge them hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the small companies are usually a lot easier for them. So there's a massive push right now into those small companies, and it's happening literally on a daily basis. You'll see in the news when the big companies are hit, but these small companies often just kind of fly under the radar and no one even reports on them. But people are often getting tens of thousands of dollars from doing ransomware at these companies. This is an entire business sector. In some other countries that shall remain nameless, there's actual businesses set up around doing nothing but ransomware at businesses and then doing all the ransom payments. And they even have support lines so that if you pay the ransom and you can't get something working, you can call them up and they'll help you encrypt your data. So it is a legit business over there, and it's only a business because they're making a lot of money on it. So how do they do it? Largely, 99% of the time, they get you to click something bad. Phishing emails, for examples. This is one of the biggest things. So these emails get disguised as being from your executives, partners, customers, whatever. And it can be as innocuous as a PDF that has malicious payload in it. So you can just get a PDF from somebody that's like, hey, can you sign this document for a new partner that we're signing up? And when you go to do that, that PDF will get into your computer, and then it will spread to all the other computers in your organization. So you can very quickly have your entire business taken over just from something as simple as opening an email. There's a lot of bad links in websites. So people will take over web hosting and then they will embed bad links into it. So the website will look fully normal. It'll look just like the website you're expecting, but there's bad links in it. And if you click on one of them, it can again compromise your computer and then spread everywhere else. The random unprovoked Teams and Zoom messages that you get, where somebody's acting like they're from your organization. That's why now all of those in Teams say, this is an external sender. Are you sure you want to talk to them? Because this has been a really big thing. Similarly, text messages, one of the big ones that we talk about in training is always the text message from your CEO. Hey, I need you to go buy 10 Apple gift cards for $100 and send them to me because I need to give them out to our favorite customers today. You get that as a text message, and a lot of people don't stop and question it. They just go forward with it. That's what's called spear phishing often, when you're targeting specific executives and trying to get them to do things. And then basic password theft. This is essentially somebody just gets your password. And then once they get your password, they can do whatever they want to as you, including escalate up to administrative levels where they can do more. This also happens because of third-party failures. So we've all seen like the big leaks from different companies where they're like, oh, all of our customers need to change their passwords now. Or, oh, hey, you've been involved in a data leak, blah, blah, blah. Any of that type of stuff can lead to a situation where someone can get into environments because a lot of people reuse their password. So if somebody leaks the password for a random company or a random website, a lot of employees use the same password at the business that they do there. So now they can just log in as those employees at work and do bad things. There's also a lot of exploits for unpatched software. So for example, if you don't have your firewall up to date with the most recent patches, then that's a way people can get in. They can work around the software through unpatched issues and get into your environment. There's also what's called a zero-day attack. So this is the one that's most troubling for people because this means you have done everything right. You have trained your people, you have got MFA on everything, you've got EDR, SIM, all the TLAs IT uses, and even with all of that, there's still a vulnerability no one knew about in your environment. So often these are firewall things, where your firewall being what connects your environment to the rest of the world. If that has a vulnerability in it, the rest of the world can get in. And if it's a 0-day, that means no one, including the manufacturer, knew about it. There's no patches for it. There's no fixes. And the bad people can just get right into your environment. So now you've done everything right, but you're still getting compromised. So that's a lot of fear and terror. So what can you actually do to prevent some of this? The number one thing is train your employees. Above and beyond anything else, training people is the most important thing you can do for the security of your company. So what does training mean? Well, training means teaching people what to look for in bad emails. So if they're getting these emails from places and they don't expect it, telling them what they should do rather than just click on it and open it. Training means maybe making people question when they get a call from somebody. We had a customer, a very large customer, they were doing a third-party audit. And part of that was what's called a penetration test, where the good guys try to get into your environment to compromise it, to tell you, hey, here's where you need to fix things. So they're a very large organization, and what the pen testing company did was they got all dressed up in logo wear from that company from their website. And then they went into the lobby of the building carrying a bunch of big boxes. And, we're in Kentucky. People here tend to be polite. So when they went over to the secure elevator, somebody was like, oh, sorry, here, what floor do you want to go to? And they badged them and sent them up to the 3rd floor. And then they just sat down in a conference room, plugged into the network, and could do whatever they wanted. So simply training employees that everyone must badge in the elevator. You don't have to be rude about it. Maybe hold the boxes and have them badge in versus just badging them up for them. But training is the most important thing because there's so many people that all can do their own part if they're trained. The next most important thing, and the most important technical thing you can do is multi-factor authentication. This is the annoying stuff where whenever you try to log in, it's like, oh, give me the code from Microsoft Authenticator, or, oh, we sent you a text message, go get that code, or an email, go get that code. It is annoying. We all think it's annoying. And I promise, however many times you get one of those, the people in IT get 10 to 15 times that many a day. I have had to do 15 of these already today. I counted for this webinar. They are annoying, but it adds an extra layer of security that really prevents people who aren't you from being able to get into stuff. So for example, if I'm a malicious person and I got one of those websites where they leaked all the passwords and I see that the CEO of your company's on there, oh, cool, I can just put his password in and log into the environment. Now I can send emails as him to the CFO to tell him, hey, we need to wire transfer money to this company. It's a new deal that's going down. It's a very hush-hush thing, but we're acquiring them. I need you to send the money today as part of our letter of intent, and basically social engineer people at that point. However, if they get that password and there's MFA, now the CEO gets a text message that says, hey, we need you to put in your code. And he goes, I didn't ask for this. I'm not logging in anywhere. And then he's going to get it again and again as they try to get in. And if he's trained well, he'll then go to IT and be like, hey, I keep getting these. Is something broke? And then IT will look at the logs, which hopefully they have, and will be like, oh, this is something bad's happening. We need to block these people from being able to get to the network. We need to change your passwords. We need to do stuff to secure it. And MFA can really help with all of that. Endpoint detection and response. This is basically antivirus on steroids. For the last 20 years, we've all talked about antivirus, more than 20, like 40 years. We've all talked about antivirus software. It all came on your computer when you got it, or it would stop you from installing the new game you wanted to play, or what have you. Endpoint detection and response is the next generation of that protection. What this actually does is look at behaviors of people. So if Terry never runs scripts on his computer because he's just the president, he doesn't have a need to be doing IT scripting things, and then one day he tries to run scripts, EDR is going to be like, wait, this isn't right. This person shouldn't be doing this. We need to stop this. So it's going to look at the behaviors and try to stop people from doing things on top of just looking for bad viruses. Patching's always been an extremely important thing. Basically just keeping your software up to date. We know how annoying it is on iPhones and Androids that it's always like, hey, you've got a new patch. Hey, you've got a new patch. And they don't let you not install it anymore. And that's because all of those things add extra security layers to the environment. Firewall security. So again, firewall is that piece of hardware that sits between your environment and the entire rest of the internet. So these are constantly attacked. There's literally organizations that do nothing but scan the entire world's internet looking for vulnerabilities in firewalls every single day. So keeping these up to date, both from a patching standpoint, but also in their configuration, because bad people get smarter. So good people have to get smarter as well to change how they do things to prevent the bad people from getting in. And then one of the most important things that's really come up because of ransomware, so like the last 3 to 4 years, this has become huge, is an immutable backup copy. So immutable basically means something cannot be mutated, changed, deleted, encrypted, whatever. So getting a copy of your backups that truly cannot be changed in any way, no matter if you want to do it or somebody else, means that if somebody gets in your environment and they try to encrypt everything, yes, they can encrypt your production data, but you've got a copy of your backups. You aren't required to pay that ransom in order to recover, because oftentimes, if it gets the backups and the production data, people are basically left with rebuild your entire company from scratch, or you have to pay the ransom. There's also a lot of legal concerns around actually paying these ransoms. You can be put on lists as aiding and abetting foreign terrorists, depending on where the ransom's coming from. Yeah, there's a whole lot of concerns with that. So you really don't want to have to. So getting a copy of your backups, be that's on a hard drive stored in a bank vault somewhere, be that using a piece of hardware that's hardened and prevents anything from happening to them, this is extremely important. But this has only really been a thing for the last 3 to 4 years. So a lot of people don't have anything for this. And then planning and testing. There was a quote I really liked that was, "No one rises to the occasion, everyone falls to their level of preparation." So you don't have people that just come out of the woodwork, figure everything out, man up and get it done. What you have is people who have thought about it ahead of time, have an idea of what they might need to do, or have experienced it before, and are then going on that experience to fix the problem. These are complicated events, and no one can just figure everything out on the fly. That's not a thing. You have to have plans ahead of time for what you're going to do when these issues happen, how you're actually going to test those plans. And again, this all goes back to the training, because part of our planning and testing is doing internal tests of our employees. So this might be sending a phishing email from our known good environment to see if people click on it. The most common one that people use is, hey, free $5 or free sandwich at Chick-fil-A if you fill out this quick survey. And people are like, I don't want a free sandwich. So they click the survey and then their computer's compromised. So if you look at it, there's ways to know that that's not a legitimate email and that's not actually from Chick-fil-A, and you should not click on it. But until you test things, you don't actually know if the training's working. And then that also helps you get into a cycle where, okay, John over in accounting failed the test. We need to make sure John's trained more. So just going through this as a cycle. And this is all a constant cycle. You're always going to be patching things. You're always going to be updating systems. You're always needing to review things to make sure that they're safe. But as I mentioned earlier, even if you do everything perfectly right, there are situations, specifically those 0-day attacks I mentioned, where even if you do everything perfect, people can still get into your environment. And when they do, that's when you really need a backstop, some way to keep your business afloat. And so Terry's going to now talk to us about cyber liability insurance and what that can do for us.
Yeah, thanks, Brent. Really great information there. And Chris, thanks for the introduction. And hello, everybody. And thanks for taking time to join us today. Yeah, my name's Terry Hyland with Hyland Insurance. Been doing this a long time, jumped in right out of school, as Chris said, and been going at it about 28, 29 years now. And one of the things that's really been pretty neat for me and pretty to watch is the evolution of cyber insurance and this cyber threat. It has been, from an insurance standpoint, a really dynamic coverage, meaning that it's evolved so quickly in a 10-year period, as we said here, but even more so if you get a little bit more granular, we've seen policies and language in the policies change nearly in 6 months. because it has moved so quickly because of the things that Brent had said. So looking back where this all started from an insurance standpoint, really was in 2015. The policies were here for this payment card industry fines and penalties that companies had violated credit card violation penalties, and we're getting again some big fines and so forth. Then we moved into just in 2016, the coverages were going towards losing laptops, something as simple as that. But that was some of the leading causes was folks leaving their laptops at the airport or in their car and getting stolen. And so the coverages were going that way. And then in 2020, we move into the social engineering where Brent was talking about the cyber deception. The email scams started to emerge, and that's where the coverages started going and going towards. 2022, we get this ransomware that Brent just talked about, and extortion payments into 2023, and really moving us to today. All that is still very, very much in play. But now what we're seeing, I think when we look back in the next year or two or 3 or 4 and say, what was the marker in 2025? It's going to be the artificial intelligence. This is over the last 6 months. It has really launched into more of a threat. I think what AI has done to exactly all the things that Brent just said about what are the risks, it's just fueled the fire. It's thrown gasoline on them. And just before we jump into a little bit more of the coverage, some facts to kind of to give that some meaning. These are from some insurance folks that we work with. Gave us some updates. Phishing email attacks increased by 202% in the second half of 24. This is all because of AI. Credential phishing attacks, which prompt victims to enter their login information to gain access, increased by 700% in the second half of 24. 65% of phishing attacks are going towards organizations now, and 83% of phishing emails are using AI technology. So what that's allowed the bad actors to do is do it more efficiently, more often, and much probably better. They can use ChatGPT to get, not is it the prince from Saudi Arabia asking for $1 million. It has the look and the feel and the cadence of the email that is very real that folks now are getting. So AI is changing the world in probably some many great ways. And I know the whole world's trying to catch up and figure it out, but it can also create some advantages for the bad actors in this space because they can hit many more in a much quicker, more efficient manner. So that's the quick evolution of insurance. So moving into who is affected, and these are the ones that jump off the page for everybody. Insurance companies, healthcare is the number one for sure because you have medical records and that's very valuable out in the open market. I'll drop down to the financial. That's your insurance companies, the financial planners, the banks. Obviously, they have a lot of personal information, a lot of banking and checking account, credit card information. The retail sector, same kind of thing. They have a lot of information. And the education sector, again, those are the top ones that year in and year out that are being the highest impacted. However, you got the e-commerce industry where they're online constantly. What we have seen recently, and from a risk standpoint, is now the bad actors are moving into more of the blue collar, traditionally blue collar industries, your construction, the manufacturing, the wholesale distribution. Those types of businesses now are being attacked more than ever. Manufacturing, you know, you have to think about not only is it their computer system, but most of their manufacturing machinery is all robotic. It's moving toward more of an automated process. You got the insurance of things out there, so it can be very disruptive to a manufacturing operation. And the risk is great for a business income loss or other type of loss to these manufacturing. And it's the same for a small contractor. Let's say you have a 3 million HVAC contract, $3 million revenue HVAC contractor. They'll from time to time need to wire money to pay for a big order or big, you know, whatever. Say it's $500,000. Well, if you have a bad actor that's been into their system and is now monitoring who and when they pay, then they can make threats through social engineering and through the cyber deception based off of their information and now how they know that this company could pay. So everybody's at risk. I think small, medium, and large, any industry, some more than others, but everybody is certainly at risk. And then the next slide kind of shows you, you know, the average. This is for a data breach from a liability standpoint, how much it costs on an average, each of these industries, a typical claim. And these are millions. You know, so the average is $3.8 million if you have a liability claim, meaning that due to our lack of security, due to our negligence on our computer system, that another party, a third party, suffered damages. These are the type of damages that are being paid out in the industry, and this is current. This is, you know, really a current data. So, healthcare, again, you got the health information, energy. You know, energy is a big deal because that's our infrastructure. And you know that's very valuable if they can shut that down and get to those networks. It's very valuable to the bad guys. Financial, technology, industry, services. You can see those same ones that we touched on, but keep that in mind as you're looking at, you know, what your limit of liability is for your cyber coverage. These are real numbers. These are really what's out there. And then the last piece about who is if you can move the slide, Chris, who is at risk? Brent touched on it. I've mentioned it just a few minutes ago as well. It's every size. And if you're like us, we work with, you know, generally speaking, that 11 to 1,000 employees type of companies. That's 78, 79% of the claims. If you look at this. So, and then even the smaller companies are being attacked as well. What we've seen with this evolution, like I said, over the last 10 years, everybody remembers the big Target and some of the other big name events over that happened years ago. Well, those Fortune 500 companies spent millions, if not billions of dollars on their cybersecurity. So the bad actors drop down to the next level and they keep coming down to the next level of company size in a much more efficient manner with AI and hitting smaller amounts of request from a ransomware anyway. So again, every company is at risk, we feel. Some are more than others, of course, but it doesn't matter if you're a 10-person employee company all the way up to the biggest. All the companies certainly are being targeted. So I just want to kind of touch base on some of the key coverages that we've been seeing and give you maybe some claim examples to think about as you're reviewing maybe your coverage or giving it some thought about what your risk management strategy is in terms of your cyber risk. So I'm going to hover around some first party coverages here with, as I mentioned ago, the liability of third parties if a third party suffers damages because of our negligence. First party, these are damages that we would suffer, our own company. And the first one is cyber extortion. That's the ransomware, and you know that Brent went through. That somebody's able to get into your system, hold at ransom until you pay a certain amount of either Bitcoin, money, some type of cryptocurrency back to them. That we have seen this a number of times, and in fact, it was the first cyber claim that we had was a cyber extortion. It was years ago, probably 6-7 years ago at least now. It was a little company, no more than 10 employees. At the time, it was owned by a couple of gentlemen that were pretty old, I'd say late 80s. And I explained to them this whole cyber liability and then cyber extortion. And they paid literally $1,500. And the older gentleman looked over to the older gentleman who was 94, looked over to the younger guy who was 87, I think, said, I don't know what he's talking about, but I don't understand either, bad criminals. I think we need to buy this. Fast forward 3 or 4 years, both of those gentlemen retire. The new group has taken it over. They call me out of the blue air and say, Terry, somebody has captured our data and they are asking for 50,000 Bitcoin. What do we do? And I said, well, we have some cyber coverage. We can get, we'll report the claim. They have a whole team of folks that can help you get your data back and pay the Bitcoin if that's what needs to happen, and move this thing forward. And I said, you can thank Jim and let's call him Joe, Jim and Joe years ago for buying this coverage when they didn't really fully understand it. But that's, and it paid off. It was 50,000 Bitcoin. They got their data back. And this was a little bitty company here in Louisville. Actually, it was a funeral home. Of all things. And so that was a cyber extortion claim that I'll never forget. So those are happening. And I go back to the early days of cyber insurance. We were going through this and presenting these options and educating our clients about the coverages. And I literally would laugh off the cyber extortion coverage, saying, if you're ever held ransom, this is what the coverage would respond. And now it's the number one, it's 1 or 1A in terms of the most used coverage on a cyber liability policy. The second one is cyber deception. That's where the email scams or this social engineering is what it's called, to where you unknowingly but willfully let go of money. Or we've had some examples for like distribution to where they unknowingly ship product to a bad actor. And so that there's several examples of this one that we've been involved in. I'll start with that first one because it's really interesting. It's a nice, very sophisticated company, and in the distribution space, they get a PO. The salesman's pumped up. It's a $50,000 order. They run it through their system, ship out $50,000 worth of material. They send the bill to their client. The client calls them back. It's all on terms, so they have 30 to 60 days to pay it. Client calls them and say, we don't owe you that. We didn't buy anything. We didn't buy that $50,000 worth of material. And our client looked and said, yeah, this is where we shipped it. And he said, well, they said, that's not even our address. And so they went back. The email address, they had one digit off, but the salesperson and the team missed it. They ship it out. Out goes $50,000 worth of material. Our client was out $50,000 of material, couldn't collect it, still had to pay for it from their supplier. And so that's social engineering. It's a little bit different that it wasn't money going out, but it was material. And then for this client, that was, a currency. Now you have to make sure on that policy, on that coverage, if you are a distributor or manufacturer, that's included in the definition. But that's a real life one too. The other one, again, another very sophisticated client, hundreds of employees. They were doing work at their plant, and they were one of the contractors doing work, sent them an invoice. There was some questioning back and forth on email as to the validity of all the charges on the invoice. Fair enough. Well, in the middle of all that, going back and forth between the client and the contractor, the bad actor intercepts the email and starts acting as the contractor with our client and saying, okay, well, we'll agree to that, but we need to be paid quickly to get this done. The CFO of our client um, did it, wired the money. It was six figures to what he thought was the contractor. A couple weeks later, the contractor comes back saying, "Hey, where's this? Let's close the loop on this outstanding invoice." They said, "We've already paid you," and it went to the bad actor, and that was another. They were deceived. It's cyber deception. And what was so fascinating by that, what I found fascinating is they came in midstream on this email and picked up and just changed the email address a little bit to where, a busy CFO, a busy controller, a busy HR, CEO, any people that are seeing multiple, maybe hundreds of emails a day just missed. And so some really interesting cyber deception claims that really are real life things happening. Last one's funds transfer fraud. This is if somebody's able to get into your system and then can impersonate you electronically to get into your bank to transfer funds. It's happening again. And another good client of ours, unfortunately, they received a call to one of their folks in their accounting department on a Friday when not a lot of people happen to be in the office. And the young fella gave out to what he thought was his bank, to the company's bank's contact, gave him their log information to their bank. Owner comes back in on Monday saying, "Where's all our money?" And over the weekend, it had all been transferred out because of a phone call. That they were deceived and allowed somebody to get into their system to act like them to transfer the money out. These are all real life cases, all very well run businesses, from a 10-person employee group all the way up to probably 400 employees in one of the cases. So, in all different industry sectors as well. So, those things are happening. And, we have other examples all the time. So, to kind of follow up where Brent was talking about what to do, this has been really interesting to watch again in the evolution of cyber insurance. What does it qualify? And I'll try real quick to give a plug to the insurance industry, which is kind of dangerous to do maybe, but they have forced this MFA thing because about 2 years ago, if you didn't implement MFA, where your employees' emails, remote access, key employees with security access, then you couldn't get coverage. And it was industry wide. It wasn't just one or two carriers. It was industry wide. So that has certainly been implemented, and claims have come down in terms of the activity because of MFA. So MFA was, the green 4 or 5 years ago. You're way ahead of it. Now it's just the base minimum. If you don't have that, you can't play in the insurance world. And the EDR thing is moving up. Again, that was, only certain people had the EDR, or some certain companies. Now that's kind of a table stake, if you will. So you can see the minimum MFA for your remote employees, remote access, employee email, and then privilege accounts, your system administrators, and so forth that can get in and out of your network. Then you move into a big one of some strong email filtering tools, employee cyber. A lot of training is a big deal as well. And so, and the EOL, the end of life unsupported software, making sure you get the old stuff out, that you're up to date, playing with and utilizing the most current systems, the patchwork that Brent mentions. And then getting down into SIM and DLP. Those are all things that I think folks like Mirazon or your IT folks can really help you with. As you want to get into bigger limits, you're going to have the green. So maybe you have $1 million today in contracts, or your business is growing and you think, hey, I might need $2, $3, $4 million of cyber liability coverage. Then you're going to have to be in the green. Underwriters are going to want to see all these things in place before they can move forward. So just to wrap up, before I turn this back over to Chris and Brent, what can you do? Yeah, and what we recommend to all of our clients is, first, is avoid complacency. Work with your folks at Mirazon. Work with, if you have an internal IT person, stay, on top of it. Annual policy reviews, ensure your business is protected from emerging threats. Work with your insurance agent. Make sure your coverage is keeping up. It is changing. There are some dynamic insurance coverages out there with some great services as well. Work with your bank. It's one thing that I always recommend. Make sure you're implementing all the best practices that your bank offers. Banks can fee us all, and nobody wants to pay the banks any more fees than what we have to, but this is good money. And making sure you're on positive pay and the electronic thing, trying to get away from sending checks. Let's use ACH and all the systems that they have in place. So work with your bank, bring them into this discussion. I think it's very important. The last piece, and without a question, Brent mentioned it as well, employee education program is a must. We can put all the systems in place, and folks are still going to make mistakes. But if we can educate everyone to be aware of, things that are out there, aware of phishing emails, do not click on something if you have any doubt. Confirm and verify before. That is all, paramount and the number one thing we all need to be working. So back to you, Chris.
I'm going to jump in to reiterate a few things Terry said.
Sure.
Because excellent presentation. He went over some stuff that I didn't. One of the big things that AI is helping people do is sound more like your boss. What AI can do is read through email threads, build that way of responding, that way of talking, and then when you tell it what you want, it will say it in the style of that person. There's also AI that will listen to voice recordings, and public figures for companies do a lot of things like this, where there's stuff out there in the world to get samples of their voice, and then the AI can speak as if they're that person. So even if you're on the phone with them, it'll sound like them, and it will follow their normal speech patterns. If they have vocal tics, even, it can replicate those. So that's where training your employees really becomes a thing. Like, okay, always do a two-way communication. So your boss calls you and tells you to do this, respond in a different means on a different medium and validate that's what they want. And the banking stuff that Terry mentioned, I completely forgot to say anything about that. Secure ACH. Like, there's a lot of banking standards that have just been around for 60, 70 years that people still use that aren't actually good. Getting out of shipping paper at all costs, but even within ACH, there's ways of doing that more securely, and your bank can help you because they want you to be using those too. They don't want to have payout frauds. And then on all those compliance things Terry listed off, that is a great example of how things keep evolving and changing. And those aren't things that if you go to renew your cyber insurance September 1 and you realize today that, oh, we've got to do more stuff than we had to do last year, it's going to be really hard even for a company like us to come into your organization and affect all of that change in a short period of time. This is stuff that you really have to be working towards ahead of time. So if you know that your insurance, your business insurance, is coming due in 6 months, go ahead and start talking then to figure out what it's going to be like so that you can be compliant to make sure you can actually get the policy you want. Because if they come out and they're like, oh, you need to have a full SIM to be able to get the policy you want, That's a big project from an IT standpoint. We can't get that in just a month even. That has some build time. So as you're looking to do all this, start talking to Hyland, start talking to us early, and we can make sure we help you actually get ready for what you need from a business standpoint. And now I'll turn it back over as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Terry and Brent, for this great conversation. Just a reminder, any questions, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put those into the chat and we can get those answered. Terry, curious question for you to kind of get us started. Is there any best practice or even a worst practice that you've seen with working with technology providers that you highly recommend that you don't do or that you do when choosing a IT security professional or a managed service firm, or even working with an internal IT person? Any best practices here that you recommend?
Yeah, so if they don't know what MFA is, maybe go the other way. But
Yeah.
no, typical due diligence, make sure that they can grow with your company. They have the resources available to do that. And I think having an ongoing partnership now with an IT company, I can know from our experience and watching a lot of our clients, it's as valuable as our CPAs, our attorneys, our insurance person, and now our managed services. It is such a growing concern, and it's not stopping. That we have to be on the leading edge of staying ahead of what we can do for the bad guys in the cyberspace. So I think, no different due diligence than maybe your other professionals that you would look to hire, but make sure they can grow and they can grow with your business and understand your business, and have the resources to do it.
Yeah, that's great. And Brenna, a follow-up question for you on this is, a lot of what we discuss is really about business strategy and the business in general. Cybersecurity and cyber insurance shouldn't be siloed off into, a certain segment. It really is about protecting the business as a whole. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about kind of just the business strategy and making sure that technology really needs to support business goals and where the business is going, and how that kind of really ties in together more with the business strategy and less of an IT strategy as well?
Yeah, so whenever we work with companies, we try to become partners with those companies. We've learned over many, many years that keeping a customer for a long term makes us way more money as a company than getting in once, doing some stuff, and it might not be to their best interest. So we're always working with companies to try to figure out what their business drivers are, and then work backwards from those business drivers to figure out what IT needs to do to support it. So for example, if somebody's saying, okay, we are looking to acquire this extra company, it's going to be doing all of this stuff, we'll work backwards from that. If someone says, for example, we're trying to re-up our cyber insurance and they're giving us a bunch of questions that we don't know the answer to, we can work with them to help them go through that and kind of build out, okay, here's what you need to do to actually be compliant with this. Here's roughly what it's going to take from your side to do it, and kind of working through all those different pieces as they come up, but more as a long-term strategy. So some of this might be, okay, this year you don't need an EDR for your cyber insurance, but next year you very well may, and we need to be pushing that way. Here's the benefits. So even though we don't have to have that done in a month, we need to still be working towards that, because that's probably going to come up and it's probably going to become a thing.
Yeah, that's great.
Saw a question in the
chat.
We
have a question from Sean. So thank you, Sean, for the question. The question is there a standard that if you follow would be accepted by insurance as a minimum or better?
Most of the major industry standards will cover most of the things cyber insurance asks for. So for example, CIS 18 is an agnostic one that's all about controls and compliance within your organization. But if you're doing SOC 2, if you're doing, if you're having to comply to like Sarbanes-Oxley, you have bigger problems. But PCI, different things like that, any of the major standards for industries probably will cover most of the things that are asked for. So usually what we recommend people do is figure out for their industry what type of compliances they may have. So, if you're in healthcare, there's HIPAA, but HIPAA is pretty loosely worded at best. So figuring out from other hospitals kind of what is the standard they're using. If you're in any type of payment processing, of course, you're doing PCI. If you're in any manufacturing for the government, you're doing CMMC. SOC 2 is another generic one, as well as SIS 18. But all of those pretty much will get you there if you're at an appropriate level of them, because they're all pretty close to each other. They're all following National Institute of Standards documents for the most part, with just some additions. Any other questions?
Looks like that is all in the chat. Before we close, Terry, anything that you want to add, any last minute nugget of advice in the insurance world that you can give our guests?
Yeah, well, thanks again to you two and for everybody joining. Yeah, my advice is just stay current with it. And, if it's work with your current group or reach out to us or whomever. Find somebody that understands this space, that can stay up with it, and take it seriously. It is a real life threat. I think for businesses, the number one threat that we all need to be working on. So thanks again, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I want to thank Brent. Thank you so much for talking on the cybersecurity side of things. And Terry, thank you again for your insights on the cyber insurance side of things as well. Here's our contact information for both Hyland and Mirazon. If there's a burning question that you have that you didn't get a chance to ask today, or you want to contact Hyland about insurance needs, feel free. If you need cybersecurity work or consulting, managed services, IT consulting, or help in those regards, or help implementing anything you heard today, Mirazon will be very happy to help and assist with that. So please contact us. Thank you guys for attending. With that, we are officially done. Please tune in for our next webinar. Thank you guys for attending. This will be placed on YouTube. And so if you know someone that needs to hear this that couldn't attend today, please send them that link and they can learn and digest this information as well. With that, thank you guys. Have a great rest of your day. And we appreciate you guys attending. Thank you, Brent, and thank you, Terry.
Thanks, everyone.